Red wine hit my chest like a slap. Cold, expensive, deliberate. Kitchen help shouldn't mingle with guests. Catherine Bennett's voice cut through the charity gala like a blade. My daughter-in-law's mother had just publicly humiliated me in front of 150 wealthy guests. Crystal glasses froze midway to lips. Everyone stared at the old man with wine soaking through his borrowed suit. That old man was me, Edward Sullivan. I stood there, 67 years old, watching my son Daniel's mother-in-law teach me my place in front of judges, CEOs, everyone who mattered in this city. My own son Daniel was 20 feet away, talking to lawyers, pretending he didn't see his father being destroyed. The security guards moved closer. "Sir, do you have an invitation?" I did. I also had something else they didn't expect. For 8 months, I'd been watching my son Daniel steal from my restaurants. $185,000 gone while his wife Serafina encouraged him to take what they felt was owed to them. But tonight wasn't about the money. Tonight was about respect. See, Catherine's husband Gregory, my daughter-in-law Serafina's father, ran a prestigious law firm downtown. What my son's in-laws didn't know was that I owned their building, had been their landlord for 8 months, quietly reducing their rent by thousands, while they treated me like hired help. But before I tell you how I made my son's in-laws pay for every insult, let me know where you're listening from, and hit that subscribe button because this story gets so much better. The Bennett family, my daughter-in-law's parents, thought they could destroy my dignity. They had no idea I was about to destroy their entire world. But before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself. Let me start from the beginning. I built Sullivan's family dining from a food truck in 1987. Lealia and I worked 18-hour days, her handling books while I flipped burgers. Cold mornings, burned fingers, customers who treated us like we were invisible. We didn't care. We had a dream. 23 locations later, that food truck became a chain across 3 states. I still remember the smell of grease on my hands, the weight of cash deposits at the end of each night. Lealia used to say I worked too hard, but she understood. This wasn't just business. This was legacy. When she died 5 years ago, her last words were simple. "Take care of Daniel." I promised I would. Maybe that was my first mistake. I thought success meant my son wouldn't struggle like I did. Daniel grew up with private schools, college paid for, a management position waiting at our flagship restaurant. Everything handed to him on a silver platter. I should have made him earn it. But when he married Serafina Bennett last spring, I thought maybe things were finally falling into place. She was smart, educated, came from a good family, Yale Law School graduate. Her parents seemed successful, respectable. I had no idea what I was walking into. The Bennett family lived in a different world. Gregory Bennett, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates. Catherine Bennett, retired federal judge. Their penthouse overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows, artwork that cost more than most people's houses. When I first met them, Gregory's handshake was firm but brief. Catherine's smile never reached her eyes. They asked polite questions about my little restaurants, while studying my calloused hands, my simple clothes. I felt their judgment in every glance. During dinner, Gregory mentioned his firm was struggling with overhead costs. The legal district was expensive, he said. Good office space cost a fortune, but image mattered in their business. Clients expected a certain standard. I listened, I nodded. I didn't mention that I owned half the commercial real estate in that district. After dinner, Serafina walked me to my car. "They're not used to your kind of background," she said softly. "Give them time." My kind of background. The word stung more than she probably intended. Driving home past my restaurants, I made a decision. If Gregory needed help with rent, I could help quietly. Through my property company, Maple Properties LLC. He'd never know it came from me. I thought I was being generous. Looking back, it was the beginning of everything falling apart. That generosity would cost me more than money. The next week, I called my lawyer, Nathan Pierce. "I want to buy the building where Whitmore & Associates has their offices," I told him. Nathan didn't ask questions. He'd handled my business affairs for 15 years. Within a month, Maple Properties LLC owned the building. Gregory's rent dropped from $15,000 to $9,000 monthly. 40% reduction. Gregory never questioned the windfall. He assumed some investment fund was cleaning house, offering better rates to keep good tenants. He celebrated at dinner that night, telling Catherine how his negotiation skills had saved them money. Serafina beamed with pride. Daniel raised his glass in a toast to his father-in-law's business acumen. I sat there, smiling, saying nothing. Around the same time, I promoted Daniel to general manager of our flagship location on 5th Street. 24 tables, 100-seat capacity, our highest revenue restaurant. I gave him full access. Payroll, deposits, vendor payments, everything. Lealia had always said trust was the foundation of family. I want you to learn the business from the ground up, I told him. This will all be yours someday. Daniel seemed eager. He arrived early, stayed late, asked thoughtful questions about operations. For the first time in years, we worked side by side like I'd always dreamed. But generosity, I learned, can be mistaken for weakness. Maple Properties, LLC, was more than just a shell company. It was my safety net, built over 20 years of careful investments. Nathan Pierce structured it perfectly. Legitimate business entity, clean paperwork, complete privacy. The Bennett building was worth $2.8 million. Prime legal district, 3 floors, marble lobby, prestigious address. Gregory's firm occupied the entire 2nd floor. 6 offices, conference room, reception area, professional paradise. The lease agreement I'd inherited from the previous owner contained interesting language. Standard terms, monthly rent, utilities, parking spaces. But buried in Section 12 was something Gregory had probably never read carefully. Moral conduct clause. Tenant agrees that no illegal activities, fraud, or acts of moral turpitude will be conducted on the premises. Violation of this clause constitutes immediate grounds for lease termination. Boilerplate language, really. Most commercial leases had similar clauses, but when Nathan showed me the paperwork, I felt something click into place. Gregory had no idea his landlord was listening to every conversation about his struggling business, his need for lower rent, his family's financial pressures. He thought he was dealing with some faceless investment corporation. The monthly rent checks came to Maple Properties' business address, a small office Nathan maintained downtown. Gregory's signature on every check, neat and confident. $9,000 monthly, a bargain for prime real estate. I kept every canceled check in a file folder, not because I needed them for tax purposes. Call it intuition. Meanwhile, Daniel was settling into his new role beautifully. The staff respected him, customers liked his friendly approach, and our daily revenue reports showed steady growth. They had no idea their landlord was listening. Teaching Daniel the restaurant business felt like passing down sacred knowledge. I showed him how to read daily sales reports, manage vendor relationships, handle customer complaints with grace. The same lessons Lealia and I had learned through trial and error. Cash is king in this business, I explained, watching him count the day's deposits. Every dollar has to be accounted for. Customers trust us with their money. We trust employees with ours. Daniel nodded, absorbing every word. He learned our point-of-sale system, memorized vendor schedules, even helped with hiring decisions. Natural leadership qualities, inherited from his mother's gentle strength. I gave him signature authority on the business checking account, full access to payroll systems, keys to the office safe where we kept petty cash and deposit bags. Complete trust. "Dad, I won't let you down," he promised one evening as we locked up together. For 3 months, everything seemed perfect. Daniel arrived early, stayed late, treated our employees with respect. Revenue stayed steady, customer satisfaction scores improved, and I finally felt like I had a partner in the business. But Serafina was pushing him toward better opportunities. Law school, maybe, corporate consulting, something more prestigious than restaurant management. "You're too smart for this," I overheard her saying during a family dinner. "My parents could help you find something in their network, real professional opportunities." Daniel's enthusiasm began to change. He started arriving later, leaving earlier, seemed distracted during our evening reviews. When I asked about discrepancies in the cash reports, he brushed off my concerns. "Everything's fine, Dad. Just busy with the lunch rush." But something felt wrong. The numbers started not adding up. The first discrepancy was small, $300 missing from a Friday night deposit. Daniel explained it as a cash register error, said he'd corrected it the next day. I accepted his explanation. The second time was a week later, $500 short. Daniel blamed a new server's mistake, showed me a handwritten note documenting the error. Again, I let it slide. By the third incident, I was watching more carefully. Our security cameras recorded everything: dining room, kitchen, cash registers, office area. I'd installed them years ago for insurance purposes, never thinking I'd need them to monitor my own son. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I reviewed the previous week's footage. What I saw made my hands shake. Daniel, alone in the office after closing time, removing cash from deposit bags. Not counting it, not recording it. Taking it. Folding bills into his wallet like he was stopping at an ATM. I watched 8 months of security footage over the next 3 days. The pattern was clear and devastating. Cash skimming during busy nights. Fake vendor invoices for supplies never delivered. Payroll manipulation. Crediting himself overtime hours he never worked. $185,000 over 8 months. I found text messages on the office computer he'd forgotten to delete. Serafina encouraging him to take what's owed to you. Discussions about needing money for a down payment on a new house. Her parents suggesting that restaurant work was beneath him anyway. My son was stealing from me with his wife's full knowledge and encouragement. The security camera timestamp read 11:47 p.m. when I finally closed the laptop. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by 20 years of family photos, feeling like I was watching my family dissolve in real time. That's when the dinner invitation came. "Edward, you simply must tell us about your restaurants," Catherine said during cocktails at their penthouse. Her tone suggested she was asking about a quaint hobby, not a multi-million-dollar business. Gregory nodded politely while mixing drinks. Restaurant business must be challenging. So much turnover, so many variables to manage. I started explaining our growth strategy, our plans for 2 new locations, but Catherine interrupted. "Edward, dear, maybe stick to cooking stories. Business talk can be so dry." The room fell quiet. Serafina examined her fingernails. Daniel studied his drink like it contained ancient secrets. "Of course," I said quietly. "I don't want to bore anyone." During dinner they asked me to serve wine, not the server they'd hired for the evening, me. "You probably know more about service than anyone here," Gregory said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. I poured their wine, collected their plates, cleared the table while they discussed legal cases and political connections. Daniel said nothing when his mother-in-law treated his father like hired help. Driving home, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Lealia's voice echoed in my memory. "Sometimes people show you exactly who they are. Believe them." But this was just the beginning. They were testing boundaries, seeing how much disrespect I'd tolerate for my son's happiness. I decided to be patient. Family was family. Daniel's marriage mattered more than my pride, but that was just the warm-up. 2 weeks later, Gregory invited me to lunch. "Man to man," he said, "I want to discuss Daniel's future." We met at an upscale steakhouse in the financial district. Gregory ordered wine that cost more than most people's daily wages. I ordered coffee. "Restaurant work is fine for some people," he began, cutting his $50 steak with surgical precision. "But Daniel has potential, real potential. Serafina's been thinking about law school for him, or maybe corporate consulting. Daniel seems happy with the restaurant," I said carefully. Gregory laughed. "Happy? Edward, he's 28 years old. You want him flipping burgers his whole life?" I explained our expansion plans, the management training program I'd developed, the profit-sharing structure that would make Daniel wealthy by 40. Gregory listened with the patience of someone humoring a child. "Real estate is complex," he said when I mentioned my property investments. "You wouldn't understand the nuances, legal implications, zoning laws, market analysis. It's not like running a diner. A diner. 23 locations generating $15 million annually, and he called it a diner." "Some people are born for service," Catherine had said during our first meeting. The words echoed as Gregory continued explaining why Daniel deserved better than his father's little business. I paid for lunch. Gregory let me. Probably assumed restaurant owners always picked up checks, like it was my natural role in life. Walking back to my car, I realized they weren't just insulting my business. They were planning to take my son away from everything I'd built for him. They were planning something bigger. The Bennett's Country Club was everything I expected. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers, members who inherited their memberships along with their trust funds. Gregory introduced me as Daniel's father who owns some restaurants. Local chains, Catherine added helpfully. Family-style dining. During cocktail hour, they steered conversations away from me whenever someone showed interest in my business. When a fellow member asked about restaurant operations, Gregory smoothly redirected to his latest legal victory. "Edward's more comfortable in the kitchen," Serafina said with a laugh that cut like glass. I stood in corners while they networked, watched them work the room like politicians, building connections, sharing insider information. They belonged here. I was an outsider being tolerated for my son's sake, but I overheard things. Gregory complaining about office rent to potential clients. Catherine discussing her financial advisor's recommendations. Serafina mentioning how she and Daniel were outgrowing the restaurant business. "Dead weight in the family," someone whispered behind me. I turned to see Catherine nodding sympathetically to another judge's wife. "Sometimes you have to cut loose the people holding you back," she replied. My hands started shaking. I stepped outside onto the terrace, breathing cold November air until my heartbeat slowed. They weren't just excluding me. They were positioning me as an obstacle to Daniel's success, creating a narrative where I was the problem standing between their daughter and a better life. Lealia's wedding ring hung on a chain around my neck, hidden under my shirt. I touched it through the fabric, drawing strength from her memory. The charity gala would be their masterstroke. The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock. Bennett Family Foundation Annual Charity Gala. Black tie required. I stared at the formal script, elegant embossing, everything designed to intimidate. This wasn't just a charity event. This was theater. Serafina delivered it personally. "We thought it would be nice for you to see how these events work," she said. "Important people will be there. Potential networking opportunities." Networking opportunities. Like I was a small-town businessman hoping to rub shoulders with real success. I borrowed a tuxedo from my restaurant supplier, Angelo Martinelli. His son was getting married next month, had bought the suit for the wedding. It fit reasonably well, though the sleeves were slightly short. "You sure about this, Eddie?" Angelo asked while adjusting the tie. "These society people, they can be—" "I know what they are," I told him. I spent the day before reviewing security footage one more time. Daniel taking cash, Serafina's encouraging texts, months of systematic theft documented in crystal-clear digital evidence. I printed bank statements showing exactly where the money went. Down payment on a new BMW, Serafina's credit card payments, weekend trips to exclusive resorts. That evening, I placed everything in a manila envelope. Legal documents, financial records, security camera timestamps. Enough evidence to destroy my son's life if I chose to use it. The envelope felt heavy in my jacket pocket as I drove to the gala. Catherine's plan was brilliant, really. Surround me with wealth and status, make me feel small and out of place, then deliver a public lesson about knowing my proper role. I walked into their trap willingly. The ballroom sparkled like something from a movie set. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across white tablecloths. Men in perfectly tailored tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than cars. The charity's cause, childhood literacy, felt secondary to the display of wealth. I recognized faces from newspaper society pages, federal judges, Fortune 500 CEOs, politicians whose campaigns these people funded. This was power displaying itself, reminding everyone who really controlled the city. The Bennett family worked the room like professionals. Gregory schmoozing potential clients, Catherine holding court with other retired judges, Serafina playing the perfect hostess, introducing Daniel as her brilliant husband, while somehow managing never to mention his current employment. I found a quiet corner near the silent auction displays, vacation packages to European villas, artwork by local masters, wine collections worth more than most people's annual salaries. Everything designed to separate serious money from those who merely thought they had serious money. A server approached with champagne. Real champagne, not the sparkling wine we served at restaurant events. I accepted a glass, noting how the server's eyes barely acknowledged my presence. I was used to being invisible to service staff. We recognized each other across class lines. "Mr. Sullivan?" A voice behind me belonged to Judge Patricia Henley, someone I recognized from newspaper coverage. "Catherine tells me you run some lovely local restaurants." Before I could respond, Catherine appeared at her shoulder. "Edward's very proud of his little diners, aren't you, Edward?" little diners, in front of a federal judge. Then Catherine made her move. It happened fast, but felt like slow motion. Catherine reached for her wine glass while gesturing dramatically about courthouse renovations. Her elbow caught the glass, sending red wine arcing through the air in a perfect crimson stream. It hit my chest like a slap. Expensive Bordeaux soaking through Angelo's borrowed shirt, spreading dark stains across white fabric. The liquid was cold against my skin, but my face burned hot with embarrassment. Conversation stopped. Crystal glasses paused midway to lips. 150 heads turned toward the sound of Catherine's horrified gasp. "Oh my goodness!" she exclaimed, loud enough for half the ballroom to hear. "I'm so clumsy!" But her eyes weren't sorry. They were calculating, measuring the room's reaction, ensuring maximum visibility for what came next. Security guards materialized from corners, thinking someone had crashed the party. A man in a borrowed tuxedo, wine-stained and clearly out of place, standing near the auction displays. Their expressions shifted from concern to suspicion. "It's fine," I said quietly, reaching for my napkin. No, this is terrible," Catherine continued, her voice carrying across marble floors. She grabbed a server's towel, making a show of trying to help while actually drawing more attention to the spreading stain. Judge Henley stepped back, protecting her own gown from potential splashing. Other guests formed a small circle, watching the spectacle with polite interest and barely concealed amusement. The wine soaked through my shirt, cold and sticky against my chest. I could smell it, expensive and foreign, marking me as careless, clumsy, someone who didn't belong. But she wasn't done yet. "Kitchen help shouldn't mingle with guests." The words cut through the ballroom's murmur like a blade through silk. Catherine's voice, clear and carrying, designed to reach every corner where important people watched my humiliation. Judge Henley's eyebrows rose. Other guests turned fully toward us now, no longer pretending to ignore the scene. A circle formed around me, wine dripping from my shirt. Everyone watching, waiting to see how the kitchen help would respond. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I began. "Oh, there's no misunderstanding," Catherine continued, louder now. "I should have been clearer about appropriate behavior. Service staff should know their boundaries." Service staff. In front of federal judges, business leaders, everyone who mattered in this city. She was teaching me my place, publicly and permanently. Daniel stood 20 feet away, talking to a group of young lawyers. He heard every word. His head turned toward the commotion. His face went pale, but he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend his father. Serafina touched his arm, whispered something in his ear. He nodded and turned back to his conversation, pretending he hadn't seen anything. My son. Watching his wife's mother humiliate his father. Choosing silence. The security guard stepped closer. "Sir, do you have an invitation?" I reached into my jacket pocket. My fingers brushed the manila envelope containing 8 months of evidence against my son, then found the invitation underneath. Cream-colored cardstock with my name printed in elegant script. The guard read it, confusion crossing his face. That's when everything changed. I stood there, wine-stained and humiliated, surrounded by 150 wealthy strangers. The security guard handed back my invitation, uncertain now about who was the problem and who was the victim. Catherine waited for my response. They all did. Apologies, anger, embarrassment, any reaction would confirm their narrative about my proper place in their world. Instead, I said nothing. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed my wine-stained shirt, made eye contact with Judge Henley, who was watching the scene with professional interest. "Thank you for a lovely evening," I told Catherine. My voice was calm, steady, without a trace of anger or humiliation. Her smile faltered. She'd expected me to argue, to defend myself, to give her more ammunition for her performance. I walked toward the exit at a measured pace, not fleeing, not rushing, not skulking away in shame. Walking like a man who had somewhere important to be. Behind me, conversations resumed. The spectacle was over. Catherine was probably explaining to Judge Henley about the challenges of dealing with difficult in-laws, how some people simply didn't understand appropriate social boundaries. In the parking garage, I sat in my car for 5 minutes. Not crying, not raging, not planning revenge, just thinking, processing, calculating. The manila envelope felt heavy in my jacket pocket. 8 months of evidence, $185,000 in theft, security footage time-stamped and documented. Lealia's voice whispered in my memory, "Sometimes the best revenge is patience." 3 days. They had 3 days left. I drove slowly through downtown, past my restaurants. Sullivan's Fifth Street glowed warm in the November darkness. Late diners finishing their meals, servers clearing tables, the same evening routine I'd watched for 30 years. At a red light, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Nathan Pierce's home number was 3rd on the list. My banker's cell phone was 10th. The head of security at First National was 12th. Interesting how many important people answered their phones for a simple restaurant owner. I thought about Daniel inside the ballroom, networking with his wife's family friends, building connections that would take him away from everything Lealia and I had built. Maybe that's what he wanted. Maybe Gregory was right about him deserving better opportunities. But stealing from me? Letting his wife's family humiliate me publicly? That crossed a line Lealia would never have tolerated. At Lealia's grave, I sat on the cold stone bench we'd placed there last spring. Her headstone was simple. Beloved wife and mother, she built dreams with her hands. They don't deserve your forgiveness, I said aloud, imagining her voice responding. The November wind was sharp against my wine-stained shirt. I reached into my jacket and touched the manila envelope one last time. Everything I needed to destroy my son's life and his in-laws' careers. Tomorrow was Sunday. Banks were closed, lawyers were with their families, judges were playing golf. But Monday morning, the phone calls would begin. Monday would change everything. Sunday morning, I spread 8 months of evidence across my kitchen table. Security footage screenshots showing Daniel taking cash, bank statements with highlighted deposits to his personal account, text messages I'd printed from the office computer. The pattern was methodical and damning. Friday night deposits, always after closing when he was alone. Weekend cash skimming during busy periods. Fake vendor invoices for supplies never delivered, payments sent to accounts he controlled. Serafina's text messages were the worst part. Take what's owed to you. Dad's too trusting anyway. We need the house down payment. My son hadn't just stolen money. He'd planned it with his wife, justified it as somehow deserved, treated my trust like stupidity to be exploited. The security camera timestamps were precise. 11:47 p.m. on March 15th, 10:23 p.m. on April 2nd. A dozen others, each showing Daniel alone in the office, counting cash, keeping some, depositing less than our daily sales reports showed. $185,000 over 8 months. Felony embezzlement in any state. I called Nathan Pierce at home. I need to file a police report for employee theft, I told him. How quickly can we document everything legally? Eddie, you sure about this? Once you file, there's no taking it back. I thought about Catherine's voice. Kitchen help shouldn't mingle with guests. I'm sure, but the money was just the beginning. While Nathan prepared the police report, I reviewed my property portfolio. Maple Properties LLC owned 17 commercial buildings across the city. Not bad for someone who supposedly wouldn't understand real estate nuances. The Bennett building lease was particularly interesting. 5-year term, signed 3 years ago when Gregory's firm was desperate for prestigious space they couldn't afford. I'd reduced their rent from $15,000 to $9,000 monthly after acquiring the property. $21,000 saved over 3 years. Money that kept their practice profitable, their lifestyle comfortable, their daughter's wedding elaborate. Section 12 of the lease was crystal clear. Tenant agrees that no illegal activities, fraud, or acts of moral turpitude will be conducted on the premises or by persons associated with the tenant. Violation constitutes grounds for immediate lease termination. Daniel's embezzlement charges would trigger that clause automatically. Gregory's law firm harbored a felon in the family. Moral turpitude by legal definition. Market rate for their space had increased to $18,000 monthly. No comparable offices were available in the legal district for less than $20,000. Gregory's firm couldn't survive that increase, not with their current client base. I owned their professional future. Nathan called back at 3 p.m. Police report filed. They'll arrest Daniel Monday morning. You sure you want to proceed with this? I thought about 30 years of building a business Daniel was stealing from to fund a lifestyle his wife's parents encouraged. One phone call would destroy Gregory's career. At Lealia's grave that evening, I sat with our original business plan from 1987. Handwritten dreams on yellow legal paper, signed by both of us in blue ink. Sullivan's family dining, a legacy for our son. Everything we'd built was for Daniel. The late nights, burned fingers, customer complaints, health inspectors, insurance claims, employee problems, 23 restaurants generating millions annually. Also, he'd have security we never had. But legacy meant more than money. It meant values, honesty, hard work, treating people with respect regardless of their background or bank account. Catherine Bennett had looked at 30 years of my work and seen kitchen help. Gregory had dismissed my business as a diner. Serafina had encouraged my son to steal from me. Daniel had chosen their approval over my trust. They chose cruelty over kindness, I said to Lealia's headstone. A text message buzzed on my phone. Daniel, Dad, can we talk tomorrow? About my future with the company? His future with the company. After stealing $185,000, he wanted to discuss his future. I turned off my phone and drove home. In my kitchen, I opened a bottle of wine. Not expensive Bordeaux, just decent California red. I raised the glass toward Lealia's photo on the refrigerator. To justice, I said quietly. Monday would change everything. Nathan Pierce arrived at my house Monday morning with a briefcase full of legal documents, police report, embezzlement evidence, property leases, corporate filings, everything we needed to dismantle my son's life piece by piece. Daniel will be arrested within the hour, he said, spreading papers across my dining room table. $185,000 qualifies as felony embezzlement. He's looking at 5 to 10 years if convicted. I signed the police complaint with Lealia's fountain pen, the one she'd used to sign our first business loan application. The ink was still blue, still steady despite my 67-year-old hands. The lease termination notice goes out today, Nathan continued. Moral conduct clause gives us grounds for immediate eviction. Gregory's firm has 30 days to vacate. He handed me a manila envelope containing the notice. Whitmore and Associates had no idea their landlord was the man Catherine had publicly humiliated Saturday night. Eddie, you understand what this means? Your son goes to prison, his wife's family loses their business. This scorches earth. I thought about Daniel's text message asking about his future with the company. The audacity of stealing from me while planning to discuss career advancement. They made their choices, I said. I'm making mine. Nathan gathered his papers. Police will call when Daniel's in custody. Property management will serve the eviction notice this afternoon. After he left, I made coffee and waited. The same kitchen where I'd planned restaurant expansions, reviewed employee schedules, celebrated Lealia's birthday every year. The dominoes started falling immediately. Daniel arrived at my house that evening, no longer the confident young man who'd managed my flagship restaurant. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. Prison booking photos aged people fast. Dad, we need to talk. I let him in but didn't offer coffee. We sat in my living room, surrounded by 30 years of family photos. Daniel as a baby, graduation pictures, his wedding day with Serafina beaming in white silk. This is all a misunderstanding, he began. The money, I was going to pay it back. Serafina and I were just borrowing against my future inheritance. Borrowing. He called theft borrowing. $185,000, I said quietly. 8 months of systematic embezzlement. Your wife encouraging you in text messages. His composure cracked. You read my messages? Dad, that's private. Nothing's private when you steal from family. Daniel stood, paced to the window, turned back with desperate eyes. Serafina's family, they have connections. Lawyers, judges. We can make this disappear if you just withdraw the charges. Catherine's connections. The same people who'd watched her humiliate me Saturday night. I already tried calling Gregory, Daniel continued. He's not answering. Serafina's parents aren't returning calls. Something about an eviction notice? I showed him the security camera footage on my laptop. 8 months of crystal clear evidence, timestamps and all. Daniel taking cash, counting it, pocketing bills like he was making withdrawals from his personal bank account. You're not the son I raised, I told him. But Daniel wasn't the real target. Gregory's call came Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. His voice was tight, professional panic barely controlled. This is Gregory Bennett. I represent the tenant at 1247 Legal Plaza. We received an eviction notice yesterday that seems to be an error. I let him explain for 3 minutes before speaking. No error, Mr. Bennett. Your lease contains a moral conduct clause. Your son-in-law's felony embezzlement charge triggers automatic termination. Silence. Long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. "Who is this?" he asked finally. "Edward Sullivan, your landlord." The silence stretched longer this time. I could imagine his face, the same expression he'd worn Saturday night while dismissing my business as too simple for him to understand. "That's impossible. Maple Properties owns this building. Some investment fund. Maple Properties, LLC. My company. I've been your landlord for 8 months, Gregory. The same 8 months Daniel was stealing from my restaurants." His breathing became audible over the phone. "Edward, we can discuss this. Reasonable people can reach reasonable solutions." Reasonable. Like publicly humiliating me at the charity gala had been reasonable. "Market rate for your space is $18,000 monthly," I continued. "You've been paying $9,000. I saved your business $21,000 over 3 years. How's that for understanding real estate nuances?" "Now listen here." "No, you listen." "Oh. 30 days to vacate. If you're not out by December 1st, I'll file for formal eviction and damages." I hung up while he was still sputtering about his connections and lawyers and how this wouldn't stand. But I wasn't finished yet. Serafina arrived at my restaurant Wednesday evening, tears streaming down her face. Not the composed Yale graduate who'd married my son, but a desperate woman watching her world collapse. "Mr. Sullivan, please, we need to talk." I was reviewing vendor invoices in my office, the same desk where Daniel had stolen cash for 8 months. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Daniel didn't mean for this to happen," she began. We needed money for the house. My parents said it was basically an advance on inheritance." An advance. Their entire family treated my money like their personal trust fund. $185,000, I said. Felony theft. 8 months of lying to my face while stealing from my business. Serafina sat across from me, mascara smeared, hands trembling. "We can pay it back. My parents will help. Gregory's firm is successful. They have connections. We can work out a payment plan." I showed her the bank statements. "Where did you think this money came from, Serafina? Daniel makes $50,000 a year managing this restaurant. How did you afford a BMW and European vacations on his salary?" She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "Your parents knew," I continued. "They encouraged you to take what you felt entitled to, called me kitchen help while you robbed me blind." "Please," she whispered. "Daniel's my husband. I love him. You should have thought about that before encouraging him to betray the man who gave him everything." I handed her a tissue from my desk drawer. Too little, too late. Thursday morning I called the State Judicial Conduct Board. Catherine's retirement from the federal bench didn't protect her from ethics investigations regarding her family's criminal activities. "I want to report a conflict of interest," I told the intake officer. Judge Catherine Bennett presided over embezzlement cases while her son-in-law was committing felony theft. The investigation would take months, but the inquiry itself was public record. Legal newspapers, bar association bulletins, courthouse gossip networks. Catherine's reputation would precede any formal findings. Her judicial pension was performance-based. Ethics violations could reduce benefits, even for retired judges. 30 years on the bench, and her son-in-law's crimes could cost her financially for the rest of her life. Friday afternoon, Catherine appeared at my restaurant's bar area. She looked older somehow, smaller than she'd seemed at the charity gala. Power diminished, left physical traces. "Edward, I think we got off on the wrong foot." I continued reviewing health inspection reports while she spoke. Good scores across all locations, which was remarkable considering my little diners served thousands of customers weekly. "What happened Saturday night was unfortunate," she continued. "Sometimes these social events become stressful. People say things they don't mean. Kitchen help shouldn't mingle with guests. That's what she'd said in front of 150 people, designed to humiliate me publicly and permanently. "I meant every word," I replied without looking up from my paperwork. "This judicial inquiry will destroy my reputation. 40 years of public service." I finally met her eyes. "You destroyed my dignity in 40 seconds. The final blow was coming. Gregory's law firm collapsed like a house of cards. First, the eviction notice. Then clients learned about Daniel's embezzlement charges and the family connection. Professional reputation in the legal community was everything, and Gregory's family harbored a felon. By Friday, 3 major clients had terminated their retainers. Corporate accounts worth hundreds of thousands annually, gone overnight. Law firms were conservative businesses. Any whiff of scandal sent clients running to competitors. The Bennett's Country Club membership was suspended pending the judicial ethics investigation. 30 years of networking, social connections, professional relationships, all depended on Catherine's standing in the community. Gregory called me Saturday morning, his voice hollow. "What do you want, Edward? Money? An apology? What will make this stop?" "Nothing," I said simply. "You showed me who you are. I believed you. My practice is finished. 40 years building a reputation, and it's gone because of your son's mistakes." My son's mistakes. Even facing ruin, he couldn't accept responsibility for his family's treatment of me. "You had a choice Saturday night," I continued. "Watch your wife humiliate me or speak up. You chose silence. You all did. We can start over. Fresh beginning, mutual respect." Mutual respect. From people who'd treated me like hired help while stealing my money and insulting my life's work. "Gregory, you're about to lose everything because you couldn't show basic human decency to the man subsidizing your office rent. Think about that." He hung up without another word. I walked away from it all. I sold Sullivan's Family Dining the following month. 23 locations, 30 years of building, gone to a restaurant chain from Atlanta. They kept the name, kept most employees, but it wasn't mine anymore. The sale price was enough for several lifetimes. More than enough for one old man who'd learned that money couldn't buy respect from people determined to see him as beneath them. I cleaned out my office on a Tuesday morning. Family photos, Lealia's coffee mug, the original menu from our food truck. 30 years of memories packed into cardboard boxes. Angela from accounting cried when I told the staff, "Mr. Sullivan, this place won't be the same without you." I hugged her goodbye. This woman who'd worked for me for 12 years, who'd never stolen a penny or treated me with anything but respect. Daniel's key to the flagship restaurant sat on my kitchen counter that evening. He was awaiting trial, facing 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement. Serafina had filed for divorce, moved back with her parents. The Bennett family was imploding while fighting criminal charges and financial ruin. My new will excluded Daniel completely. 30 years of building a legacy for him, and he'd chosen to steal it instead of earn it. I put the house on the market and moved to a small coastal town where Lealia and I had honeymooned. Simple place, friendly people who didn't care about my net worth or business history. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful move you can make. But the story wasn't over. Daniel's trial made local newspapers. Restaurant dynasty heir embezzles $185,000 from family business. The irony was perfect. He'd wanted to escape the restaurant industry, and now it would define him forever. His lawyer tried pleading down to misdemeanor theft. The prosecutor, reviewing 8 months of systematic embezzlement, refused. Felony conviction, 5 years minimum, restitution plus penalties. Serafina filed for divorce while Daniel was in county jail awaiting sentencing. No surprise there. She'd married up into restaurant money, not down into criminal conviction. The Bennett family's social circle evaporated overnight. Country club suspension became permanent. Gregory's few remaining clients found other firms. Catherine's judicial pension review dragged through administrative courts. Daniel wrote me letters from jail. Apologies, explanations, promises to change. I read them once and filed them away. Words were easy. Actions had consequences. His sentencing hearing was scheduled for December 15th. I didn't attend. Nathan Pierce represented my interests, ensuring restitution terms were met, and Daniel understood the permanent restraining order keeping him away from any property I owned. 5 years federal prison, 3 years probation, $185,000 in restitution, plus 20% penalties. Daniel would be 40 before he breathed free air again. Serafina moved back to her parents' cramped apartment. 3 adults sharing space meant for 2. The penthouse sold to pay Gregory's mounting legal bills. The restaurant empire I'd built was gone, sold to strangers who'd never understand what each location meant to Lealia and me. But watching my son's mugshot in the newspaper, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you needed to walk away from anyway. The Bennett family was imploding. The local business journal ran a feature story. Restaurant pioneer retires after family embezzlement scandal. They interviewed longtime customers, employees, vendors who'd worked with Sullivan's family dining for decades. "Edward Sullivan was the most honest businessman I ever dealt with," said Angelo Martinelli, whose company supplied our restaurants for 15 years. What his son did was a betrayal of everything the Sullivan name represented. The charity gala story emerged through social media. Guests remembered Catherine's wine-spilling incident, her kitchen help comment, my silent dignity in the face of public humiliation. Context changed everything. "I was there that night," Judge Patricia Henley told a reporter. "Mrs. Bennett's behavior was appalling. Mr. Sullivan conducted himself with remarkable grace." Online forums debated the justice of my response. Some called it excessive, destroying a family over money and insults. Others understood the deeper betrayal. 30 years of building something for my son, only to watch him steal it while his wife's family treated me like hired help. The Bennett name became toxic in professional circles. Catherine's ethics investigation expanded when other judges reported questionable behavior patterns. Gregory's bankruptcy filing became public record. Serafina worked retail jobs while her parents fought to keep their apartment. Daniel's prison sentence was covered in trade publications as a cautionary tale about family business succession. When trust breaks down, the Sullivan case study ran in Restaurant Management magazine. I didn't read the articles, didn't follow the legal proceedings, didn't track the Bennett family's continued downfall through public records. In my coastal town, I volunteered at a community kitchen that served meals to anyone who needed them. No questions asked, no judgments made, just food, dignity, and respect for every person who walked through our doors. 6 months later, something unexpected arrived. Beat 29, Bennett family destruction, 270 words. The bankruptcy auction notice arrived in my mail, forwarded from my old address. Gregory's law firm assets were being liquidated to pay creditors. Office furniture, legal library, computer equipment, 40 years of practice reduced to a government surplus sale. Catherine had lost her judicial pension appeal. The ethics board found pattern of behavior inconsistent with judicial standards, including conflicts of interest related to family criminal activity. 30 years of public service ended in financial disgrace. Serafina was working at a department store in the mall, selling cosmetics to women who used to attend her mother's dinner parties. Full circle from Yale law graduate to hourly retail, all because she'd encouraged her husband to steal from the man who'd subsidized her family's lifestyle. Daniel had 18 months left on his federal sentence. His letters stopped coming after I returned the first dozen unopened. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt with words from a prison cell. The Bennett penthouse sold for below market value in a forced sale. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, city view. They'd moved to a studio apartment near the airport where airplane noise rattled windows and neighbors didn't recognize fallen judges. I felt something I hadn't expected when reading the auction notice. Sadness. Not for their suffering. They'd earned their consequences through cruelty and greed. But sadness for what might have been if they'd chosen kindness over condescension, acceptance over arrogance. Lealia always said that how you treat people when you think they can't help you reveals your true character. The Bennett family had revealed themselves perfectly, but one person reached out. The letter arrived on simple white paper, handwritten in careful cursive. No expensive stationery, no legal letterhead, just honest words from someone who'd lost everything. "Dear Mr. Sullivan, I know I have no right to contact you after everything that happened, but I needed you to know that I understand what we did was wrong. I encouraged Daniel to steal from you. I let my parents treat you terribly. I sat silent while my mother humiliated you at the charity gala. I chose their approval over doing what was right. There are no excuses. We saw your kindness as weakness. We treated your generosity like something we deserved instead of the gift it was. We forgot that respect isn't about money or education or social position. It's about how you treat other people. Daniel is angry at you for pursuing the charges. My parents blame you for their financial problems, but I know the truth. We destroyed ourselves through our own choices. You built something beautiful with your restaurants. You employed hundreds of people, fed thousands of families, created a legacy your wife would have been proud of. We took that trust and broke it for money we didn't need and status we didn't deserve. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that someone in our family finally understands what we lost when we chose cruelty over kindness. I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan, for everything. Serafina. I read the letter 3 times, then placed it in my desk drawer next to Lealia's wedding ring. Edward faced a choice. Daniel's final letter arrived on prison stationery, stamped and censored. His handwriting was smaller now, pressed into thin paper with institutional ballpoint pens that barely worked. Dad, 18 months left. I've had time to think about what I did. Really think, not just make excuses. I stole from you. Not borrowed, not took in advance. Stole. $185,000 from the business you and Mom built with your hands. While you trusted me, taught me, gave me everything. Serafina filed for divorce last month. Said she couldn't be married to someone who betrayed his own father. Funny thing is, she was the one who encouraged me to take the money in the first place. But I can't blame her. I made the choice. Her parents lost everything too. Their business, their house, their reputation. Mom's judicial pension. Dad's law practice, all gone because they couldn't treat you with basic human decency. All I had to do was stand up to them one time. Tell them to stop insulting you. I chose their approval instead. I know you'll never forgive me. I know I destroyed the legacy you built for me. I know I'm not the son you raised or the man Mom would have wanted me to become. Prison changes you, shows you who you really are when everything else is stripped away. I was weak, greedy, entitled. I thought I deserved things I hadn't earned. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I threw away. You were a better father than I deserved. Daniel. 6 months after the gala, I made my decision. The anniversary of Lealia's death was cold and clear. November 15th, 5 years since I'd lost the only person who'd ever loved me unconditionally. I brought fresh flowers, white roses, her favorite, and our original business plan from 1987. Yellow legal paper, faded ink, dreams we'd written together in our tiny apartment above the food truck. Sullivan's family dining, a legacy for our son. We'd built it all for Daniel. Every early morning, every burned finger, every difficult customer. We'd wanted him to have security we'd never known, opportunities we'd never had. But legacy wasn't just about money. It was about values, character, how you treated people when you thought nobody was watching. I read Serafina's letter again, sitting on the cold stone bench beside Lealia's grave. Genuine remorse, taking responsibility, understanding finally what they'd lost through their own choices. Daniel's letter was different. Prison had stripped away his excuses, shown him who he'd become. Maybe that was justice too, not just punishment, but understanding. What would you do? I asked Lealia's headstone. The wind moved through November trees, rustling leaves that sounded almost like her voice. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. I thought about the coastal town where I'd found peace, community kitchen where I volunteered, serving meals to people society had forgotten. No questions asked, no judgments made, just basic human dignity for everyone who walked through our doors. Maybe Daniel deserved a second chance. Maybe they all did. 6 months after the charity gala, I faced the hardest decision of my life. My cottage overlooked the Pacific Ocean, simple and clean like the life I'd built here. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen window where I watched sunrise every morning with coffee Lealia would have approved of. The original apron from our food truck hung framed on the living room wall. Sullivan's family dining ested 1,987 inches embroidered in faded gold thread. Lealia had sewn it by hand our first week in business. 3 blocks away, Harbor Community Kitchen served anyone who needed a meal. I volunteered there 4 days a week, chopping vegetables with the same hands that had built a restaurant empire. No recognition, no status, no complicated family dynamics, just food, service, basic human dignity. The work reminded me why I'd started cooking in the first place. Not for money or success or legacy, to feed people, to create something that brought families together, made them feel welcome, gave them a place to belong. Lealia's wedding ring hung on a chain around my neck, hidden under my volunteer t-shirt. 40 years of marriage, reduced to gold and memories. But the memories were enough. Some evenings, I sat on my small deck, watching waves crash against rocks, thinking about choices and consequences and the difference between justice and revenge. I'd achieved justice, legal, Complete, devastating justice that destroyed everyone who'd betrayed my trust. But justice wasn't the same as peace, and peace, I discovered, required something more difficult than revenge. This morning I mailed 2 letters, one to the federal prison where Daniel was finishing his sentence, one to Serafina's apartment near the airport. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something else. Recognition that people could change, that consequences could teach lessons punishment alone couldn't provide. Daniel would be released in 6 months. He'd need work, housing, a chance to rebuild the life he'd destroyed through his own choices. I couldn't give him back the restaurants he'd stolen from, but I could offer him something else. A job at Harbor Community Kitchen. Minimum wage, hard work, serving people who couldn't pay. No shortcuts, no special treatment, no family connections. Just honest work for honest wages. Serafina's letter had shown genuine understanding of what they'd lost. Her divorce was final, her parents' appeals had failed, her world had collapsed completely, but she was working, supporting herself, taking responsibility for her choices. Sometimes people need to lose everything before they find out who they really are. What would you do if your own family betrayed you like this? Would you walk away quietly, or would you fight back? The answer, I've learned, isn't simple. I gave them everything. Love, trust, opportunity, financial support they didn't even know about. They chose to see weakness instead of strength, opportunity instead of generosity. But walking away taught me something important about respect and dignity, and the difference between being generous and being foolish. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time, but also believe them if they genuinely change.